ओम नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय। ओम नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय। ओम नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय। नारायणं नमस्कृत्य नरं चैव नरोत्तमं देवीं सरस्वतीं व्यासं ततो जयम् उदीरयेत्। नष्टप्रायेषु भद्रेषु नित्यं भागवत सेवया भगवती उत्तमश्लोके भक्तिर्भवति नैष्ठिकी। कृष्णाय वासुदेवाय देवकी नंदनाय च नंदगोपकुमाराय गोविन्दाय नमो नमः। ॐ अज्ञानतिमिरान्धस्य ज्ञानाञ्जनच्छलाकया चक्षुरुन्मिलितं येन तस्मै श्रीगुरवे नमः। श्रीचैतन्यमनोभीष्टं स्थापितं येन भूतले स्वयं रूपः कदा मह्यं ददाति स्वपदान्तिकम्। वन्देऽहं श्रीगुरो श्रीयुतापदकमलं श्रीगुरून् वैष्णवांश्च श्रीरूपं सागरजातं सहगणा रघुनाथान्वितं तं सजीवं साद्वैतं सावधूतं परिजनासहितं कृष्णचैतन्यदेवं श्रीराधाकृष्णपादान् सहगणललिता श्रीविशाखान्वितांश्च हे कृष्ण करुणा सिंधु दीनबंधु जगतपते गोपेशा गोपिका कांत राधा कांत नमोस्तुते। तप्त कांचन गौरांगी राधे वृंदावनेश्वरी वृषभानुसुते देवी प्रणमामि हरिप्रिये। वंशकल्पतरुभ्यश्च कृपा सिन्धुभ्य एव च पतितानां पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमः। जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासादि गौर भक्त वृंद। हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे हरे, हरे राम 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 हरे हरे। नमो विष्णुपादाय कृष्णप्रेष्ठाय भूतले श्रीमते रघुनाथ स्वामी नामिने नमो विष्णुपादाय कृष्णप्रेष्ठाय भूतले श्रीमते भक्तिवेदांत स्वामी नामिने नमस्ते सारस्वती देवे गौरवाणी प्रचारिणे पाश्चात्य देशतां त्वं करोति वाचालं भंगं लंघयते गिरिं यत्कृपातमहं वन्दे श्रीगुरुं दीनतारिणं परमानंद माधवं श्रीचैतन्येश्वरम्। हरि ओम तत्सत्। हरे कृष्ण। Thank you all for joining. We are continuing our discussion on chapter 28 of the third canto. We are amidst the beautiful discussion of the beauty, the transcendental beauty of the Supreme Personality of Godhead as the object of meditation of the yogis as well as the bhaktas. Of course, the conversation is predominantly focused on Ashtanga Yoga, but of course, it's the same Lord that the yogis and the bhaktas meditate on, yeah, or think about. So the form is still the same, it's just that their mood is a little different. The yogi's meditation is a passive absorption, and the bhaktas is one of active service. Yeah. It's like, I'm giving a cross example, so may not be fully relevant or appropriate, but so that you get some idea of what I'm trying to say, or what is the relative position between the yogis and the bhakta. Just like a boy who's in love with a girl, when he doesn't have an active relationship with her, all he's doing is looking at her from a far distance and being absorbed in thinking about her and her form and her beauty. But when he actually comes close and develops a relationship, then there is active seva. Because he doesn't think of it as seva. Seva in the sense service. Service means he makes actual attempts to do something to please the object of his or her love. Of course, this applies in both directions, nothing specific to male or female. So understanding, appreciating, and contemplating on the beauty is one step. But when a person falls in love with the transcendental form of the Lord, one goes beyond just the passive adoration and takes the next few steps of cultivation of an active relationship. And that is the bhakta. And that is why the bhakta is not just using the Lord to meditate and get liberated and then forgetting him. But the bhakta, for him, the meditation is not just the means, it is the goal as well. What does it mean? The objective of the devotee is to get further and further closer to the Lord and render eternal, loving, devotional service to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And with that aspiration, the devotees may sometimes want to go the Vaikuntha realm, Golok Vrindavan, which is the topmost planet there, because they want uninterrupted, unending, your devotional service to the Supreme Personality of God. So anyway, right now the focus is on Ashtanga Yoga because that is the description that Lord Kapila is giving to Mother Devahuti because of the specific questions that Mother Devahuti had asked, and she wanted to know how this process of Ashtanga Yoga, this Yoga Mishra Bhakti, is working. And as a part of the description of the meditation process, we have already discussed in the last class how the overall form of the Lord is to be conceived by the yogis. Again, form is not an imaginary form. It is not a painter's creative imagination. Let me think of what can be very exciting and beautiful and try to draw it out. We discussed these points in details. I'm just quickly recapping. But this is indeed the eternal form of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And that is why it is mentioned both in the Vedic scriptures as well as some other religious traditions that God made man in his image and not the other way around. It is not an anthropomorphological concept that God we have imagined to be 2 hands, 2 legs because we are 2 hands, 2 legs. Some people think that if horses were to make God, they would think of God as a big, powerful horse. So sometimes people have this kind of a thinking. But the scriptures reveal that advanced life forms all have a humanoid form. 2 hands, 2 legs, 2 eyes, head, torso. Because that is similar to the form that the Lord has eternally. Of course, the Lord takes many forms, but his original form is like this. Because the Lord takes form of Varaha. The Lord can take any form. In fact, the Lord takes form in all species of life. We know only a few, but the Lord appears in all species. Ramadi Murti Shukala Niyamena Tishtan Nanavataram Akarod Bhuvaneshu. But the original Shama Sundar Swayam Bhagavan is similar. And that is why you'll see that the Devatas also have forms which are similar. So all these evolved forms, even on other planetary systems, are so, we may say human-like, but actually it is not human-like. They're all God-like. There's something interesting. There are some people, this is not related directly to Krishna consciousness, but there were some researchers on UFOs and aliens. And they made a very interesting observation. And isn't it quite interesting that even though there are so many reported alien species and some have been sighted, there have been cases of abductions and so many people have claimed to see so many. But isn't it clear that practically all these so-called advanced life forms, very technologically advanced, obviously, because they have come to Earth, obviously, at least they're technologically advanced. Whether they are divine or demoniac is a second question. But in any case, they are at least evolved in their consciousness in terms of their thinking. Practically all the reported species are said to be humanoid in some way. This is very interesting. Humanoid means They have a torso, they have two hands, two legs, eyes. Of course, some may show big eyes, some may show small eyes, some may have slightly different forms and colors of skin. But this is again is just an interesting observation. But what we are trying to say is all these higher forms where evolved consciousness is there, like the scriptures say, they are made in a form which is similar to the Supreme Personality of Godhead in various ways. And especially this human form, because the Leela of Goloka Vrindavan, the original form of the Lord, Swayam Bhagavan, is so similar to the Earth environment. It's quite interesting. Even though Earth is a middle planetary system, the form of the humans and the Earth environment is so similar. Of course, spiritual world is Sat Chit Ananda, eternal, full of bliss. There is no garbage, there is no corona, there is no corruption and all these things. So all the inebriety removed. But the shapes and the forms and the species and the general way of life is interestingly very, very, very similar. That is why Krishna, when he appears in this universe, he appears on this planet in Vrindavan, because it fits so well into how his world is in the original spiritual world. This is quite interesting. I'm just sharing some thoughts and observations for your contemplation. Anyway, coming back to the topic of at hand, is the meditation on the form. And again, I'm mentioning this again and again only because please, please, please do not think of the Lord's form as imaginary. If you think like that, you will not make progress in bhakti. Your progress will immediately be arrested. So please do not do like that. The form of the Lord is transcendental. And that is why the Lord emphasizes that he exists beyond the material manifestation eternally. Even before the material world was manifested, when Brahma was created, when Brahma saw the Supreme Lord, he saw that form. So the form exists independent of the material world and beyond the material world. And that is what the Gita and the Bhagavatam explains. So that is the transcendental form that we want to meditate. That is what Lord Kapila is explaining here. Of course, needless to say, I think we have mentioned this earlier, the form of the Lord doesn't limit him, because the Lord is not limited to his form. The Lord can be all pervading and at the same time be situated in a form. That's the special and the amazing thing about the Lord. Unfortunately for us, it is not like that because we are Anu, but he is Vibhu. That's why repeatedly he says, I am inside the world, but the world is also inside me. So that is the Lord's Achintya Shakti. Some of these things we cannot conceive with the material mind because we do not have that experience. Krishna, when he opened his mouth to show to Mother Yashoda, when Mother Yashoda said, oh, you're eating dirt, open your mouth, let me check whether you've eaten dirt. Krishna was at Brahmanda Ghat on the bank of the Yamuna, but when he opened his mouth and Mother Yashoda peeped inside, rather than seeing a tongue and some teeth and some mud, she saw the entire universe inside Krishna's mouth. Now Krishna is inside the universe in Vrindavan on the bank of the Yamuna. How can the universe be inside him? And inside that universe, she saw there is earth, and in the earth there is Vrindavan, and in Vrindavan there is Yamuna, and on the bank of the Yamuna there is Krishna. And next to Krishna, she is standing, keeping inside the mouth of Krishna. And then she zoomed, like Google Maps. She saw into the mouth of that Krishna who was within the mouth of Krishna. And she saw the full universe situated within his mouth. And this went on and on and on, picture in picture in picture in picture, until she became dizzy. So when she started becoming dizzy, Krishna withdrew that vision. Because Krishna is Achintya, Achintya Rupam. In the 8th chapter of Bhagavad Gita, we were discussing on Wednesday. We discussed that verse on Wednesday. Anyone remembers that verse? Achintya Rupam, Aditya Varnam, Tamasap Parastat. Very beautiful. I don't remember the verse number. It's a very beautiful verse. Kavim Purana Manusha Sitaram. Very beautiful. It starts like that. So anyway, so that is the inconceivable Achintya Rupam. So one has to contemplate on that inconceivable form, that even though we are conceptualizing a form, this form is an inconceivable Achintya form, which is the source of everything, exists independently, but at the same time the Lord exists. So after having given a description of the overall form of the Lord, Lord Kapila now focuses on describing how the yogi should go about meditating on the transcendental form of the Lord, limb by limb by limb. Because when it is a process of meditation, the specific recommendation in verse number 20 of this chapter is that the yogi should not have a collective view of all the limbs, but one should meditate on each limb gradually. This is very interesting. For bhaktas, also the same concept is there. When we take darshan, start with the lotus feet and then gradually start taking darshan upwards onto the face, up to the face. So let us go through 21 onwards so that we can hopefully, Krishna willing, complete this chapter today. I think this is the third session for this chapter. Just that I am so greedy to relish the sweetness of these verses. So sometimes I go into too much detail. But let's see. Yeah, it is 8.9 correct. Amit and Minalji, yeah, that is correct. Kavim Purana Manusha Sitaram Anoraniyam, yeah, and so on and so forth. That's a very beautiful description, which is given for the same process of yoga that has been described in the 28th chapter. Because when we are talking of the Lord Achintya Rupam, his form is not like ours. That is how he must be understood. He must be understood as the maintainer of everybody, the source of everything, the original person who has a transcendental, inexhaustible form. So the description of the Lord's transcendental form begins with the description of the Lord's lotus feet. Text 21 is a very, very beautiful verse. Sanchintayed Bhagavatas Charanaravindam Vajrankusha Dhvaja Saroruha Lanchanadhyam Uttunga Rakta Vilasan Nakha Chakravala Jyotsna Bhir Ahata Mahad Ahada Mahada Hridaya Andakaram. Very, very beautiful description. The translation is one should meditate first on the Lord's lotus feet. And how do the Lord's lotus feet look like? First, it starts with not even the feet directly, the bottom of the feet. Because the bottom of the feet itself are so wonderful and beautiful. The soles of his feet, S-O-L-E soul, not the S-O-U-L soul. The sole of the feet of the Supreme Personality of God, it is so beautiful. It has very special marks. Our feet, if somebody observes closely, we'll see cracks, mud, dead skin. How many of us have, beautiful reddish, gentle, delicate soles of our feet? Krishna's lotus feet or Lord Narayan's lotus feet are so beautiful. And they have beautiful natural decorations. There is a mark of a thunderbolt, Vajra, Ankusha, the gourd, a flag, lotus. Or actually, there are many more marks, only 4 are mentioned here. Actually, there are many more. There is a beautiful description of the various marks on the feet of the Lord. Of course, Krishna on his lotus feet has very specific marks which are similar to that of Narayan, but a few more as well. But Lord Narayan has certain very specific marks. These are common. The thunderbolt, gourd, flag, and lotus are common to Krishna, Narayan, Ram, Chandra. And it is said, this is very specifically mentioned, that whenever the Lord appears, these marks are always on his lotus feet. So if somebody is claiming that I am incarnation of Vishnu, so you can say, please show me your lotus feet. Okay? And please tell him upfront then that if your lotus feet do not show all these marks, then you will have to see my feet also. Because anybody who pretends to be the Supreme Personality of Godhead deserves to be punished. So these marks are a must. Just as scriptures say that these marks are must. Even when Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu appeared in this planet, he had these marks on his lotus feet. In fact, his parents, Jagannath Mishra and Sachi Mata, when the Lord was very young, they would see around the house some footprints, small footprints, on which the marks of the gourd, the thunderbolt, the lotus, and the flag were there. Because the Lord would move around in the house, but they couldn't relate it that these were of their own sons, Vishwambhar, Nimai. They were thinking, oh, maybe our Shaligram Shila, which is Vishnu, maybe at night he is roaming around our house. That's how they would think. So that is why I said, those who are incarnations must display. So even when Lord Kalki will appear, anybody who claims to be Kalki must display this. Of course, this is one of the proofs. There are many ways to ascertain an incarnation, but this is one of them. So this is a very simple way. So the lotus feet of the Lord are beautifully decorated by the signs. And it is said the Lord's nails are beautiful like rubies and they are splendorous, giving out effulgence like the moon, which removes the depression of our hearts. So when we meditate on the Lord's lotus feet, beautiful bluish colored with ruby like toenails. Tad Vishnoho paramam padam sada pashyanti surayah viva chakshuratatam. All the devatas are always absorbed in meditating on these lotus feet of Lord Hari. His toenails are splendorous and shining, and the effulgence is so beautiful. And seeing these beautiful lotus feet dispels the gloom of the heart, it gladdens the heart. And these lotus feet are not ordinary, they are so glorious, the Bhagavatam describes. Not just glorious for us, not even just glorious for the Devatas, but the head of all the Devatas, Mahadev, Lord Shiva himself, he appreciates this lotus feet of Lord Hari so much that the water which has washed the lotus feet of the Lord, Ganga is the water which has washed the lotus feet, is the Charanamrut of Lord Hari. He takes it on his head. Ganga, which is the water which has washed the lotus feet of Lord Hari, is taken on the head by Lord. And these lotus feet, which have that mark of the thunderbolt, they act like a thunderbolt, even though they are very sweet and soft. The feet of the Lord are extremely soft for the devotees, but they are very hard, like thunderbolts, and they can shatter mountains. What kind of mountains? Mountains of the papa, the sins. The comparison the scriptures given is that mountains are very difficult to break. But Indra's Vajra is so powerful that when Indra throws Vajra, Mountains are blown to pieces, entire mountains. So the comparison here is in a similar way, when devotees meditate on the lotus feet of the Lord, they are so powerful, that meditation is so powerful that that meditation on the feet, like a thunderbolt, can destroy and explode mountains of sin. And that is why devotees are recommended, especially those who are still purifying themselves, are recommended to continue to meditate on the Lord's lotus feet for a long time, so that all the sins and the inauspiciousness within their hearts is removed. So this is all lesson for us. I also do that whenever I go in front of the deity. I don't spend too much time looking at the face. I want to meditate on the lotus feet. Even Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu prays, Mama Janmani Janmanishware. He says that, not in that verse, in another verse, he says, I want to be the dust. Please place me as a dust, as a particle of dust on your lotus feet. So that is the aspiration, because the Lord's lotus feet are so glorious and so wonderful. Even Lakshmi Devi, the goddess of fortune, everybody wants Lakshmi Devi. When Lakshmi Devi originally, when I say originally, I'm talking about the material world. Of course, the Lord, Goddess Lakshmi, exists in the spiritual world eternally. But in the material world, she is manifested as the Chanchala Lakshmi. When she came from the ocean of milk, when the ocean of milk was churned, and she came out, all the devatas wanted her, because all living entities want good fortune. But what did good fortune want? Lakshmi Devi wanted Narayan. She went and put the garland around Lord Narayan. And after putting garland around there, what good fortune did the goddess of good fortune seek? She didn't say that, oh, I have married the big boss now I can enjoy. Yes, she can enjoy, but what is the enjoyment that goddess Lakshmi sought and is happy and fixed in? She is always situated at the Lord's lotus feet, massaging the Lord's lotus feet. This is my greatest treasure. She thinks like that. This is the perfect place to be, at the feet of the Lord, always serving his lotus feet. The goddess of fortune is thinking like this. What to speak of us? If she thinks this is the greatest fortune, goddess of fortune is thinking this is the greatest fortune for her. Why shouldn't we think and understand that? So there is no greater fortune. That Lakshmi, which is Chanchala everywhere in this world, who's so difficult to keep, you get money also, suddenly it may go. That Chanchala Lakshmi becomes stable and fixed only at Lord Hari's feet. This Lakshmi is the mother of all the devatas, including Lord Brahma. And she is meditating and massaging the feet and the calves, the part of the leg which is below the knees all the way, very carefully and very attentively, without becoming bored. How long I have to press? Can I take a break? She's not seeking any break. Because on the transcendental platform, there is no boredom. On the transcendental platform, there is no, I have had enough, I want some change. No. All these are characteristics of the material realm, of material time. Transcendental realm, one can unendingly relish spiritual seva and feel ever fresh and ever new for eternity. So do not worry. oh, when I go to spiritual world, I'll get bored. All the time in Vrindavan, maybe I may want to come for some time, go New York, go Switzerland, go here, and take a break occasionally from Krishna service. This is the concept of the material mind. Because material mind is such that no matter where it goes, it will never find lasting happiness. That is why the material mind thinks similar thing will happen on the transcendental platform, but no. Because the transcendental platform is the constitutional position of the soul, constitutional position never gives boredom. Will you ever feel I am bored of breathing air? I want to stop? No. Like that. That is the very nature of the soul. It never feels. And soul is timeless, the Lord is timeless. So the devotee should continue to meditate on such lotus feet. Summarily, across verses 21, 22, 23, on these beautiful lotus feet which are meditated on the devatas served by Lakshmi and whose water is taken on the head by Lord Shiva. And by meditating on these feet, one will remove all the gloom from one's heart, and the mountain of sin and contamination will be smashed to pieces by the vajra of the feet of the Lord. After this, after having established oneself in this meditation, one must rise to meditation on the Lord's thighs. Very interesting. The thighs of the Lord are said to be the storehouse of all energy. Those who meditate on the Lord's thighs, they become infused with energy. Of course, the thighs are not usually visible, isn't it? Because even the Lord is wearing silken garments. So the Lord's thighs are not correct. You see, yeah, bodybuilders, right? Those who are, having six packs and so many muscles, when they want to show what they have to do, they have to come in a small undergarment like cloth so that everybody can see their body and their muscles. So, of course, when the Lord is also covered in a beautiful dress, of course, it's not easy to see his limbs, even though some of his limbs are very beautiful and very beautifully shaped. In fact, in some places, it's not here, in some places, the thighs of the Lord are also compared to the beauty of small young elephants. But anyway, we'll not go into that. But here, the comparison of the thighs of the Lord, they are said to be whitish blue. And the material comparison, material meaning what experience we have in this material world, the comparison is given to the whitish blue hue of the linseed flower. So if you want to see what that color looks like, you can Google it, linseed flower, then you will see what kind of a whitish blue color it is. And if you want to see that shape of the thighs of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, normally it is difficult to see. So the hint is given in the verse, in the Bhagavatam 24. You must see how graceful and beautiful they are, and that is visible when the Lord is seated on the shoulder of Garuda. When he sits there, the shape of his thighs is very beautifully visible. And then the yogi should also meditate on the hips of the Lord, which are also very shapely and rounded, and which are encircled by a girdle. A girdle is an upper cloth around the waist. It's used something like a belt, but it is not a belt. It is a cloth, usually a cloth or some form of ornament, which wraps around the hips all the way. And this girdle rests on the exquisite Pitambara, yellow silk cloth. The yellow silk cloth flows very beautifully all the way up to the Lord's ankles. It's very beautiful. So very shapely, beautiful thighs, rounded hips, a beautiful girdle, beautiful lotus feet. Then, as the meditation progresses higher, the yogi should meditate on the moon-like navel. The navel of the Lord, sometimes people wonder, oh, How come the Lord has navel? The Lord is not born. We all have navel because we are born. We were connected by the umbilical cord to somebody. That's why we have a navel. But the Lord has a navel because from the navel he sprouts the lotus. Huh? That's why he's known as Padmanabha. He is Anadi. He doesn't have a mother and father, so he doesn't have an umbilical cord connection. But he is the womb of the universe. And the universe is manifested as a lotus coming from the navel of Garbhodakshay Vishnu. So this navel is the foundation of the entire universe. And from there springs the lotus on which the firstborn Brahma appears. The yogi should meditate like this on the navel. There are many descriptions of the navel of the Lord which are very elaborate and beautiful. It is said that the navel also can be compared to a lotus, and it's also very deep and very beautiful. Then the yogi should also meditate on the Lord's chest. And it is said that the nipples on the Lord's chest resemble exquisite emeralds. And these emeralds, emerald is a greenish stone. Now, why that color is greenish, I really do not know. I'm also curious, but that is the description given. Exquisite emeralds, which look whitish because on the Lord's chest there are beautiful milk white pearl necklaces, and those pearl necklaces have a whitish effulgence, which also cast a whitish hue on his chest. Then the yogi should meditate higher from the navel to the chest, and from the chest on the chest of the Lord. Actually, there's another very beautiful object of meditation. Actually, there are two objects of meditation. On the chest of the Lord is the beautiful Srivatsa mark, the eternal residence of Lakshmi. Lakshmi, Devi Lakshmi, she is not only situated at the Lord's feet, but because she is always serving the Lord's lotus feet, she is so dear to the Lord that the Lord eternally keeps her on his chest, very close to his heart. That is the mark of Srivatsa. And that Srivatsa mark is sometimes compared to, is said to be like a white hair on the Lord's chest. Very interesting. Even the Lord is eternally young. He doesn't have any white hair on his head. It's always very dense, black, beautiful hair. There's one white hair on his chest. And that white sometimes is also called as silver color. Silvery white hair on his chest, which actually represents Goddess Lakshmi. In some places in the scriptures, it is also called like a white line. Some places described as a white hair. So Lakshmi Devi, Mahalakshmi, the goddess of fortune, is resting there eternally. The Lord's chest is the source of transcendental pleasure for the mind and full satisfaction for the eyes. It is extremely beautiful. The Lord's chest is described as very broad. His waist is quite thin. His hips are also broad, broad shoulders. Then one should meditate on the beautiful neck of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And the yogi should absorb himself on the beautiful neck. The neck of the Lord, on the neck of the Lord is hanging that beautiful another necklace on which the Kaustuba gem is also residing on his chest. Along with Lakshmi Devi, the Kaustuba Mani, the Kaustuba jewel, is also residing on the Lord's heart. If you remember, we had discussed this some time ago. The Kaustuba jewel represents the sum total of all the living entities, the Jivas. Just like Mother Lakshmi is very dear to the Lord. All the jivas are also very dear to the Lord. And especially those jivas who, like Lakshmi Devi, are fixed on serving his lotus feet. May not be literally like Lakshmi Devi, because Lakshmi Devi has that exclusive service in the spiritual world, especially in Vaikuntha. Vaikuntha, you will not get so much opportunity to massage Lord's feet because Lakshmi Devi is very possessive of that seva. In Goloka, if you become a Gopa or a Gopi, you may get that chance. But in Vaikuntha, it's very difficult. But anybody who renders menial, humble service to the Lord is considered as serving his lotus feet. Serving the spiritual master is serving the lotus feet of the Lord. Rendering humble service to the Lord and his mission in any way is considered serving the Lord's lotus feet. So at least we can do service to the Lord's lotus feet in that manner. After having meditated on the Lord's beautiful neck, the neck of the Lord, I don't know whether it's described here, but oftentimes in the scriptures, the neck of the Lord is compared like a conch, a shankha. I think it's not mentioned here, but the beauty of the Lord's neck is compared to a shankha. Just like the shankha has lines on it, the Lord's neck also has, I think, 3 lines on it. Sometimes you can see in the beautiful pictures of the Lord, you see those 3 lines on the neck of the Lord. These are not lines of hanging fat like what some of us may have, not those kind of lines. We are so materially conditioned, we immediately try to relate to such kind of a material thinking. But the Lord has very beautiful 3 lines. I'm sure that those lines also have specific significance. I'm not personally aware of them. But that is the meditation which should be performed. After that, one can meditate on the Lord's 4 arms, which are the source of all the powers of the Devatas. The arms of the Lord represent his strength. And the Lord empowers the various Devatas with those powers so that they can execute their various services on behalf of the Lord to manage the material universe. And on those arms, beautiful armlets, bracelets, very beautiful. And they are shining and glorious. The comparison given is they look like freshly burnished. Burnished means just polished. Gold is beautiful, but when gold has just been polished, it shines so beautifully. And what is the comparison given? The comparison is given is just like when Mount Mandar was rotating. Mount Mandar, when the Samudra Manthan was going on, and Lord Kurma was the pivot, and on the pivot, Mandar was the churning rod, and Mandar mountain was being rotated on the back of the beautiful Lord Kurma. And it is said, as it was rotating on the back of Kurma, and whatever jewelry was there on Kurma, all that jewelry on the back of Kurma and the body of Kurma was also getting polished by the circular motion of Mount Mandar. In fact, even though it is not described here, it is said the Lord was enjoying that massage on his back by the rotation of the Mandara hill. It was like satisfying, just like sometimes if we have an itch on the back and somebody scratches on the back, we feel so nice. So the Lord was feeling like that. Of course, that description is not in this chapter, it is elsewhere, but I'm just mentioning that as a note for your information. One should also meditate on the 4 arms are the various ayudhas, right? There's a Shankha, Chakra, Gada, Padma. The beautiful Sudarshan Chakra, Sudarshan, so beautiful to see. It is so attractive. At the same time, so powerful. It has 1,000 spokes. The ridge, the peripheries with so many spokes, 1,000, it is dazzling with luster. Chakram Yuganta Nalatigmanemi Brahman Samantad Bhagvat Prayuktam Dandagdi Dandagdam Arisainyamasu Sham Yata Vata Sako Hutasha. It's a beautiful description of Sudarshan Chakra in the 6th canto, 8th chapter. Not here, but there is a beautiful description. That's the Sudarshan Chakra. which has that dazzling luster, and also the beautiful conch, which resembles as if the Lord is holding in his hand a beautiful swan. If you think about it, the body of the swan, the graceful body of the swan, resembles a conch. So holding the conch also resembles as if the Lord is holding on his lotus palms a beautiful swan. The yogi should also meditate on the Lord's club. Please remember, each and every ornament of the Lord is named. Everything in the spiritual world is personal. The chakra is called Sudarshan. What is the name of the conch? Anyone?
Panchajanya.
Yes, Panchajanya is the name of the conch of the Lord. And the name of the mace, the gada, is Kaumodaki. So one should meditate on the cloth because the ayudas of the Lord are also his personal energy. They are his anga, upanga, ayudha. Yes, Swatiji, that's correct. That verse is from the Narayan Kavach. The description of the Sudarshan Chakra. Chakram Yatha Vata Sakahukasha. So, Kaumodaki is very dear to the Lord. And one should meditate on that powerful gada, that club. Why? It smashes the demons who are inimical to the Lord. And it is said that the gada, because it smashes, it is oftentimes smeared with the blood of the demons. One should also meditate. So that is also in the Narayan Kavacha. There's a beautiful description of the gada as well. Gade Ashani Sparshana Vispulinge Nishpinda Nishpinda Jita Priyasi Kushmanda Vainayaka Yaksharaksho Bhuta Grahams Churnaya Churnayarin. Oh Gada, who's smashing the demons, you're so powerful. Please protect me from all evil forces and ghosts and hobgoblins. You are so powerful, you can crush and destroy everything. So this verse is especially said to be very favorable for protection from attacks by negative entities. Gade Ashani Sparshana Visfulingi, that it is sparking fire as the Lord is using it in his fight. Nishpinda Nishpinda Jita Priyasi Kushmanda Vainayaka Yaksharaksho Bhuta Grahans Churnaya. This is also from Narayan Kavacha. I'm just mentioning that here there is only a brief reference. Also the beautiful garland, the Vaijayanti garland, made of multiple beautiful forest flowers. The Lord's garland of Narayan is not said to be a one flower, it's said to be multiple flowers and leaves. And it is ever fresh, and there are beautiful bumblebees which are hovering around the garland with a buzzing sound. And one should meditate also on the beautiful pearl necklace which is discussed. So beautiful, milkish white pearls on the Lord's chest. And also the Kaustuba gem, which is considered, the Bhagavatam verse 28 here says, represents the pure living entities who are always engaged in his service. I think we already discussed this. Like Lakshmi Devi is represented on the chest via line. All these pearls on the Lord's neck are like beautiful devotees who are dedicated to the Lord, who are always situated on his chest as so dear to him. The yogi should then meditate on the Lord's lotus face. Now only one should come to the Lord's. The Lord's lotus-like beautiful face is so beautiful. His nose is so prominent. It's very sharp. His crystal clear cheeks, they are shining and they are illuminated by the glittering of the Lord's alligator-shaped earrings. Makara Kundala, the kundala are shining, and the glittering from the shining Makara Kundala reflects onto these beautiful crystal clear cheeks of the Lord. That is how the yogi should meditate. And the Lord has beautiful curly hair, lotus like eyes. Kamala Dalayata Aksha. Dalayata means a petal like. Kamala. The Lord's eyes are like a petal of a lotus. What is the meaning of petal? The lotus is the lotus petal has a peculiar shape. It is long. That's why you'll see some of these pictures of the Lord. The eyes are said to be long. In fact, sometimes the eyes are said to be so long that they stretch. They said sometimes said to be stretching all the way close to the ears. So long doesn't mean that they are like the Chinese eyes, which are closed and long. Not long in that sense, but they are wide, but then they become narrow and tapering towards the end, and they become long. And his eyebrows, which are extremely beautiful, they are said to be dancing. So this scene is so beautiful. His face with the curling hair and his beautiful eyebrows and his eyes. The comparison is given just like in a beautiful pond, a pair of fish are swimming in a lotus pond where bees are humming. That is how the lotus face of the Lord would look like. In fact, it is said that even that scene would be put to shame as compared to the Lord's face. Now, we don't have time to discuss this, how the fish and how everything compares. So I'm not going to go into that. You can read the purport, try to understand that. And through this beautiful face and through his eyes, the Lord is casting beautiful, loving glances. The Lord is looking affectionately at his devotees. And the Lord's glance is so soothing. Correct? When the Lord affectionately glances at his devotees, that glance is so soothing for the devotees. It immediately removes all their miseries, the threefold miseries disappear with his glances, which are accompanied by a beautiful smile. Because when the Lord sees his devotees, he's so happy to see his devotees. The Lord loves to see his devotees, and when the Lord sees his devotees, he's so happy that he very affectionately glances on them. And these affectionate glances of the Lord are full of abundant grace. That smile is so benevolent, it's full of so much grace, so much blessing. For those who are surrendered to him, those glances are full of so much blessing that grace can dry away an ocean of grief. So we should always be aspiring when the Lord will cast his merciful glances. You see, that is why many times in the prayers, the great devotees will always say, "Oh Lord, please look at me and cast your merciful glance." Huh? I don't want to go into those. There are many prayers. We don't have time to. We are still far away from closing the chapter. It's 9:55. Sorry for my incompetence, but we are not. But at least we'll complete the description of the Lord's form. We are almost there. His glances are accompanied by this loving smile, and they can remove remove all the grief. So when the Lord looks and glances, it's actually extremely soothing to the heart. Now, some of these things we have to only experience, only then we will know. But at least until then, we can at least appreciate based on what the scriptures describe. And one specific thing Lord Kapila mentions is very important. He says there is special emphasis on meditating on the eyebrows of the Lord. Because the eyebrows of the Lord are especially beautiful, and there is a special benefit of meditating on his eyebrows. His eyebrows are so beautiful. They are manifested by the Lord's internal attractive potency, and he meditates on the eyebrows of the Lord. He becomes free from the charm of Madana, the god of lust. So all the sages who want to become free from this most deepest attachment to material nature in the form of attraction to the opposite sex, which Madan Kamadev is always exerting through his bow, Cupid, correct? He shoots arrow, right? Yeah, correct. Even up to this day, probably this idea came from our scriptures. There's a heart, and within the heart there's an arrow. Yes. Hit by the arrow of Cupid. What is that arrow of Cupid? It is the arrow of the form, taste, smell of the material form. Cupid sends from his bow, sends it into our heart, and we become injured by lust. So beautiful, so attractive. I want to enjoy. But the Krishna's eyebrows are so beautiful. They are so beautiful. They themselves make a beautiful bow. Correct? Can you imagine? Don't look at my eyebrows, they're quite ugly. But Krishna's eyebrows are so beautiful, they make a beautiful bow. Yes, you can imagine the center of the bow and two arches like this. They make a beautiful bow. And through that bow, the Lord, through his beautiful glances, is shooting arrows. Pushpa Bana. And those arrows which come from this beautiful eyebrows, which represent his internal energy, not Maya. They are so beautiful and so attractive that whosoever's heart is pierced by the Pushpa Bana coming from this bow of the Lord's eyebrows, when he becomes hit with that in his heart, his attraction to material things and material sex attraction will immediately disappear. So this is the way to become free from material attraction. Meditate on the Lord's eyebrows. I'm giving more description than what is in this verse. I'm giving you from many other scriptures so that you understand why that eyebrows are relevant and how they actually remove lust. But this is a higher meditation. You have to start with the feet first. But ultimately, when the meditation reaches to this point and the Lord's attractive glances come on the devotees, then the devotee's heart is captured. Hari, he will steal the heart. And with the heart steeped in devotion for the Lord, the devotee should meditate on this beautiful face like this. And then he should also meditate on the laughter of Lord Vishnu. First is the smile, then the laughter. When the Lord laughs, his laugh is mild laughter. The Lord doesn't laugh, in an uncontrolled way. His laughter is so captivating and it can be meditated upon. When the Lord laughs, one can see his beautiful teeth, which resembles jasmine buds. And those jasmine buds appear reddish tinged. Why? Because the Lord's beautiful lips, which are so deeply red, the shine from those lips casts a reddish hue on his jasmine-like buds. This is so beautiful. When the yogi sees this, he doesn't desire to see anything else. And can you imagine Lakshmi Devi is so fortunate? She's always massaging the feet and she's always looking at the Lord's beautiful form like this. So when the heart, the moral is, when the heart becomes charmed by the Lord's beauty like this, the heart is no longer charmed by the attractions of Maya. By following this process, verse 34 says, the yogi gradually develops his love for the Supreme Personality of Godhead. He becomes so attracted He feels such ecstasy that the hairs on his body start standing on end because of his excessive joy. He's bathed in tears and he's overwhelmed with intense love. And he becomes attracted to the Lord in such a way, just like a hook. A fish who's attached to a hook gradually becomes snatched away from the water and taken away by the fisherman. Similarly, the Lord, the mind of the yogi who becomes hooked onto this beautiful form of the Lord, withdraws from all material activity and becomes fixed in spiritual absorption. Can I take 5 more minutes? Is it okay? I can complete the chapter, I think, 5 to 10 minutes, if you don't mind.
Sure, Prabhuji.
Thank you. So we are at verse 35. So, like this, so the objective of this intense absorption in meditation on the transcendental form of the Lord is that the mind becomes so absorbed in the beauty and the glory of the spiritual form of the Lord that it loses attraction for material things. And the mind, when it loses attraction for material things, the attachment and repulsion, which are the result of material modes, disappears and the mind becomes fixed. All material contamination goes, detachment from material things comes, just like a flame of a lamp becomes steady. The mind, which is dovetailed to the Supreme Personality of Godhead by that beautiful experience of transcendental absorption, becomes free from the influence of the three modes and becomes steady. At that point, one becomes situated in the spiritual transcendental stage, and the true glory of the spiritual soul becomes manifest. And one transcends the material modes, and that is why it doesn't become affected anymore by material happiness and distress. Being free from the influence of the modes, the yogi is able to see the true nature of the self and his eternal relationship as a part and parcel of the Lord. He understands that all these material interactions and pleasure and pain and happiness and distress, they were all because of this false ego and false identification to the body, which are all product of avidya, his ignorance, and actually he is beyond and above all of this. He perfectly realizes his self. And he becomes so absorbed on the transcendental platform that he practically becomes free from material identification. In fact, he becomes so spiritually situated that sometimes, even though he's moving around, he becomes almost sometimes not even conscious of actually having a material body. And this is at very high levels of absorption. Bhagavatam describes sometimes Prahlad would be in such a state. He would be moving around oblivious that he has a material body. That's an intense state of absorption. That is the absorption of the Uttam Adhikari, who's at the highest level of spiritual absorption. Just like a drunken, intoxicated person sometimes is so oblivious of his body and what is happening around. A person intoxicated in spiritual realization also becomes oblivious. But the Lord takes care of his body and takes charge until all his karma is over and his material tenure is over and his body is discarded and the soul goes back to Godhead. The Lord takes charge of maintaining and making sure everything is working, because sometimes the devotee becomes so absorbed, the yogi becomes so absorbed that he becomes oblivious of the body and sometimes even fails to take care of the body properly for its material maintenance. In this way, the yogi is fully absorbed in samadhi, the highest perfectional stage of yoga. And in such a state, he never misidentifies any more with the material body as his self. He considers the body and the reactions of the body just like he may consider a dream. He can see very clearly. He has already detached. He knows the body is related to him, but he doesn't see that he's the body. He's very clear. And because of this clear realization, he can understand that his relatives, his body, his house, his wealth, everything are distinct from him. He understands that he and his body is not the same. At the same time, he understands that just like fire is situated in wood, just like fire is different from the wood and the fire is different from the flames and from the smoke, he understands that although everything is intimately connected, they are ultimately coming from the fire. So the Supreme Lord, who is known as Parabrahma, is ultimately the witness of everything. So he understands the nature of the Lord and he understands that everything is connected to the Lord, just like everything is connected to the fire, the smoke, the burning, the flames. But yet the fire exists independently. Everything is connected to the Lord, but still the Lord exists independently. He can understand. He also understands himself as the Jiva to be different from the body and the five elements and the senses. And he understands that everything that is manifested are different energies of the Lord. He sees that everything is within the Lord and the Lord is within everything. That is the realization that he achieves. And just like fire is present within all kinds of wood in an unmanifested way, similarly, the spiritual soul is also situated in different kinds of bodies. Of course, the Paramatma is also situated in that way, and also the living entity is situated in a subtle form, in different forms of. So having achieved this realization through this meditative process and having realized the Lord's transcendental nature and his own transcendental nature, the yogi is able to surmount the insurmountable spell of Maya, which is actually very, very difficult to transcend. Like Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, Daivihi Esha Gunamayi Mama Maya Duratyaya. This divine energy of mine, Maya, is very difficult to overcome. Mama eva ye prapadyante mayam etam tarantite. But those who take shelter of me and surrender to me, they are able to transcend this Maya. So the same conclusion is being mentioned here at the end of the 28th chapter, that those who actually develop their attraction to the Lord by meditating on him, through that meditation, one becomes absorbed, one becomes free from contamination, one develops attachment. And that attraction and attachment, which is spiritual, it gives such a spiritual taste for the yogi that he forgets and becomes disinterested in the material qualities and their interaction and the so-called illusory pleasures of material energy, that he withdraws and becomes firmly situated in that spiritual realization and is able to easily transcend Maya. So that is the process. So at the end of the day, whether one takes the process of the Ashtanga Yogi or the Bhakta, or for that matter, any process, ultimately detachment from matter and transcendence to the modes is only possible by becoming attracted to the all attractive. That is why Krishna says this point again and again in the Gita also. That if you want to understand me perfectly and transcend material energy, it is only possible through devotional service. Okay, so we'll end here. Thank you. Granthara Srimad Bhagavatam ki Jai. Srila Prabhupada ki Jai. Samaveta Gaur Bhakta. So I'm opening up the floor for any questions. Those who are getting late, they can drop off. But if anybody has any questions or comments, then we can take. By the way, chapter 8, just 1 minute. Chapter 8, verse 9 goes as follows. Kamim Puranam Anushasitaram Anur Arniyamsam Anusmaretya Sarvasya Dhataram Achintya Rupam Aditya Varnam Tamasa Parasta. Thank you for those. Yeah, sorry. What was the question?
Is there any meaning of Kaumodaki?
The words Kaumodaki, I do not know. I think there would probably be some meaning. Does anyone know? I don't know on top of my head what literally the word Kaumodaki means. We'll try to find out and we can share.
Is Mataji name also Kaumodaki, right?
Yeah, that is because of the Gada, no? The name is coming from there. Kaumodaki Devi Dasi. Yeah. So she's the servant of the Gada of Lord. That is the meaning. So one can be named after the Lord, after his devotees, after his Anga, Upanga, Shastra. So all the paraphernalia that the Lord has is also manifested of the internal energy. These are not material paraphernalia. The jewelry of the Lord, the clothes of the Lord, they are all extensions of his internal potency. The Ayuda, the weapons, the Kaumodaki is a person. Sudarshan Chakra is a person. The conch is a person. So you can offer prayers. There are some who are especially devotees of the Lord's ornaments. They are devotees of the Lord, but they are specifically attached. Some great devotees are especially attached to Sudarshan and they worship Sudarshan. Some may be attached to Kaumodaki, the Gada of the Lord. Be attached to various and can pray to various. So each of these various weapons and paraphernalia of the Lord also represent certain potencies, and one can get specific blessings and specific energies from these paraphernalia of the Lord. So one may pray for protection. Devotees pray to Sudarshan. To be free from the influence of negative entities, one can pray to Kaumodaki. The conch is representative of transcendental wisdom. The lotus also represents detachment from matter and transcending material existence. So there are so many special blessings one can derive from these various paraphernalia of the Lord. Yeah, thank you. Anything else?
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Yes, Swatiji, Hare Krishna.
Last SB class, when you were explaining, you mentioned one verse like Cheto Darpanam Arjanam. So I Google and I search, it's from Chaitanya Charitamrita. So the more you hear, the heart will be cleansed. So the vibration of that chanting, there are 3 stages. One is offensive, second is almost offenseless, and third is offenseless. So can you please describe?
That description will be 10 classes. So we will take that up separately as a separate topic. But I'll just briefly mention. So that verse, Cheto Darpanamarjam, is part of the Shikshashtakam, which are 8 verses, which were compiled directly by Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Even though Chaitanya Mahaprabhu did not compile any books personally, he instructed others, and based on his teachings, the Goswamis wrote various spiritual literature. Personally, there was one book which Lord Chaitanya has compiled when he was Nimai Pandit, but that book was also cast into the Ganga. There was a book on grammar. That's another story. We don't have time for that. But these are the only 8 verses which were compiled, which were noted down, and they are included in Chaitanya Charitamrita. But the author or the poet is Lord Chaitanya himself. So that is the verse Cheto Darpanamarjanam. So yes, chanting is recommended by Chaitanya Mahaprabhu as the ultimate remedy to transcend material existence. And the essential point that Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is saying, of course, the 3 stages are not described there in the Shikshashtaka, but they're described by the Acharyas as Namaparad, Namabhas, and Shuddhanam, 3 stages of chanting. What essentially this means is that even though the name can give Krishna Prem very easily, that Krishna Prem is accessible through the name, attainable through the name only when we chant the name purely. So some people may say, oh, I have chanted Krishna, but why I have not got Prem? So the point is that the name is all powerful, but to access the potency of the name, there is a particular quality to chanting the name. So initially that quality may not be there in our chanting. That is why we may not be able to access that pure potency of the name. So initial stages are said to be Nam Aprad, where one is chanting the name, but offensively means making various mistakes. So there are 10 offenses listed. Then as one makes an effort to get rid of the offenses, one comes to a clearing stage called Nam Abhas, which is the shadow of the name. And then when one completely overcomes all offenses, one is able to chant the name purely. And pure Nama gives one prema. So most of us at the moment are either in the Namaparad or at best the Namabhas stage. So I think that's essentially the point. So the point is that even though one chants, what is also important is the quality of the chanting. When I'm saying quality, quality is about the consciousness in which one chants. That is important. So it's not just about attention. Attention is one thing and it's very, very important. It's one of the offenses to chant inattentively. But beyond just the attentiveness and absorption, it's also the right conception and the right attitude towards the name, towards the Lord, towards the devotees. All of these things matter in terms of chanting the holy name properly. So that's a very elaborate science, and that is worthy of a very elaborate discussion. So one day we will have an exclusive discussion on that topic. Okay?
Oh, okay, so I'll keep in my mind and I'll remind.
Yes, but you don't have to wait for me for that class. There is a lot of material available. So Chaitanya Charitamrita discusses this topic in great detail. So if you Google within Chaitanya Charitamrita, Prabhupada explains in detail. There are many books written by many devotees. Harinam Chintamani is a very beautiful work which describes the glories of the holy name, and this topic also in great detail. It is based on the conversations between Lord Chaitanya and Haridas Thakur, the greatest chanter of the holy name. So that is a very beautiful book. It has been translated. So you can look up Harinam Chintamani. There you can find a lot of information. There have been commentaries or summarized versions of Harinam Chintamani which speak about the holy name, written by sannyasis like Sachinandan Maharaj. There are books written by Satswarup Goswami on the holy name and meditations and chanting on the holy name. So many devotees have written a lot of wonderful literatures. So yes, we will discuss it one day, but until then, you can always refer to these books. Yeah, but that is the key point. The key point is, if we want the full benefit of the name, it is important to chant the name in the right quality, in the right quality of consciousness, in the right quality of attention and absorption. All this is more important. All this is important.
Okay, thank you, Prabhuji.
Anything else? Okay. Yeah. So thank you all very much. Grantra Srimad Bhagavatam ki Jai.
Jai.
Prabhupada ki Jai. Samaveta
Jai.
Gaur Bhakta Vrinda ki
Jai.
Hare Krishna.
Jai.
Hare